and welcome. You're watching The Buck Stops here. I'm Kadak. The big story continues to be the demonetisation debate. The Prime Minister continues for the second day in a row to aggressively defend his policy. Has he taken a huge political gamble? This as fault lines are being drawn with the opposition being pitched against the Prime Minister. In an interesting reference, Narendra Modi referred to his past as a tea vendor and said that the policy to take back 500 and 1000 rupee notes and effectively ban them was a Kadak decision, equivalent or reminiscent of the kind of tea he used to brew. In fact, he said colloquially, the black money decision is Kadak, like my chai. Talking about the hardships people were facing, he did acknowledge inconvenience but promised it would be temporary, saying that the people who were actually awake at night, sleepless in the city and looking for sleepless pills were the rich. The poor, he said, were actually sleeping absolutely peacefully, a remark that has become hugely controversial with the opposition. The opposition, in fact, is banking on a united front. As we've been saying, you can see those pictures. Sitaram Yechuri of the left and Derek O'Brien of the Trinamool Congress shaking hands at that opposition meeting in Parliament today. This is going to be the issue in Parliament as cash continues to be a problem at various ATMs and lines continue to be serpentine. Mamata Banerjee is hitting back at the Prime Minister, saying that the poor are sleeping well at night, saying, Mr. Prime Minister, don't insult common people and the poor. On the program today, it's Notebank politics versus the rest. And the key question, will any of these politicians come together to actually really address the elephant in the room? And that is the cash economy of politics itself. When will we see a ban on cash donations? All that and more. But first, the Prime Minister batting aggressively for his policy.
न कोई भ्रष्टाचारियों को चिंता होती, न काले धन वालों को चिंता। ये आपके वोट की ताकत है कि गरीब चैन की नींद सो रहा है और अमीर नींद की गोलियां खरीदने के लिए
All right, so those remarks by the Prime Minister earlier chairing a meeting of the Parliamentary Board of the BJP. The Prime Minister waged that the country is with the BJP and the BJP decision. There will be no rolling back, no turning back, and this is temporary inconvenience that will lead to the long-term cleansing of the system. The images that you see on your screen are in fact of, in the last few days, we've actually seen masses of money that is abandoned, just stacks and stacks and stacks of money. These are really dramatic images, some floating in the Ganga, some actually found stashed in a milk van, and in a house in Nagpur also, crores of rupees found. So these perhaps go to the point that the government is trying, in fact, to make, which is that 3 lakh crores and counting of deposits have in fact have come back to the banks and therefore to the government, and now could be used to spend on social welfare schemes. That is, of course, the big defense of the government. We'll also be going across to the SBI chairperson, the State Bank of India chairperson, in a moment. But let's introduce our panel now. Nalin Kohli of the BJP is with us. Mahua Mitra of the Trinamool Congress is with us. Meera Sanyal, who has, of course, been the head of a bank but is also now a member of the Aam Aadmi Party, is with us. Anjali Bhardwaj, a rights activist, particularly concerned with the right to information, is with us. And CM Vasudev, who's been Economic Affairs Secretary and knows a thing or two about this entire debate, is with us as well. Our panel will keep getting additional voices as well. I'll start with you, Nalin. Clearly a very, very sharp defense. The Prime Minister making some extraordinary statements in the last 24 hours, including saying there's a threat to his life, that forces are out to ruin him. Today talking about the poor are sleeping easy at night, it's the rich who are sleepless. Was that a considered remark? Because the fact of the matter is that although it may be a temporary inconvenience. There are daily wage laborers that we have interviewed who actually say their contractors have not been able to pay them in the last 24 to 48 hours because of this problem with the availability, the easy availability of the new notes. So is the Prime Minister correct in saying that the poor of this country are at the moment sleeping peacefully at night?
Well, first of all, Barkha, as you would realize, the Prime Minister doesn't make intemperate or inconsidered. You know, he does make only considered remarks. The second is, I think that's a phrase that he has used, and that phrase has to be seen in terms of the figurative speech of the fight against black money. I don't think the poor of this country have hoards of black money. They, in fact, most of them have to subsist after 70 years, roti, kapda and makan. These basic things are not available with the vast majority of our population.
Right.
What about black money? So black money is indicative of the rich. The word is, those who would have black money are those who have got ill-gotten way. It does not include people like, you know, professionals who earn their entire income by check. It goes into the account. They sleep also equally well. But I think that comparison has to be seen in terms of the fight against black money.
But you know, Nalin, you just said
for
the
every
Prime
example,
Minister does not
for
make
every
an
example
intemperate
of the
remark,
poor.
Yeah, okay, complete your point. Complete your point.
I was just coming to that. I was coming here. So, for every example that one may say that there was an interview of a person inconvenienced, there are an equal, if not more, number of examples that also are extremely refreshing and encouraging. Like if you see somebody who is specially abled saying, I know it's going to take time, I know there's a problem, but I'm happy to live with it and wait for the results.
I don't dispute.
Or, I mean, I work, you know, I've been with a tea garden. I mean, I'm their advocate.
Yeah.
And their place they've, you know, managed. People there are saying, okay, we understand it's going to take a few days. No problem, because nobody is losing employment.
Nalin,
they understand this is there.
now.
So I think there are good,
I agree with
my
you.
last point, I'm
okay.
finished.
Okay.
I'm just finishing.
Okay.
I'm just finishing. My last point, Barkha, is that there has to be an element of inconvenience in this, because the mathematics is very clear. 85% of the notes are 500 and 1000, only 15% are hundreds. So in the change over time, and if there's no element of surprise, the scheme is bound to fail.
Okay, hang on. Now, hang on. I need to ask you something political. I'll come to the implementation of the scheme in a moment, but I need to briefly ask you something political. The Prime Minister has said that his life could be under danger. Yesterday, that is the comment that he made. There are forces out to ruin me. Meri barbadi karna chahte hain. They could even take my life. Who is he talking about? What is, you said the Prime Minister makes very considered remarks. This is a dramatic remark. Who is he talking about? What is he talking about?
Barkha, with all your experience as an award-winning journalist, do you have any doubts that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, from the time he has been Chief Minister of Gujarat, does not have a threat perception that may be marked in the extreme? And has not the Prime Minister been at a rally where bombs went off in
No, I meant in relation to the black money debate. I meant in relation to the black money
debate. So therefore, a man who is under such a threat perception, who in a rally attended by lakhs, there were bomb blasts, and look at the people there did not panic, it would have been a disaster. That person taking on black money, in which terror financing, criminal financing, drug financing, even child trafficking, all of it are an integral part. And we know this has been happening for decades.
Okay.
So in such a scenario, would these forces not even desire more to harm him?
Okay, let me bring in Meera Sanyal, with all your experience of actually running a bank, but also as a politician today, as an opposition politician today. Would you be so neutral so as to say that this is a good policy, perhaps the issues are with its implementation, or does the Aam Aadmi Party question the policy itself? And I ask you this because the Finance Ministry figures till the weekend suggest that 3 lakh crores have come back to the banks in deposits, which the government would say, see, we told you so. There is huge inconvenience, there is hardship, but it will settle down. That is what the government would argue.
So I think, Barkha, the first thing that we need to note that not all cash is black money. And I think the first thing that anyone who's making policy should understand that this 3 lakh crores is representing the legitimate cash economy, which is now panic-stricken because nobody can pay anyone. You can't pay for your, wages. You can't pay for your daily necessities. You pretty much can't do anything. So the people who are queuing up are putting legitimately earned cash money, which is not black money, into the system.
So you're saying that the whole policy is premised on the assumption that all cash is bad cash?
Exactly, which is absolutely not true. This is a very, very large cash economy. And so let's look at, first of all, the intentions are good. You want to remove black money, that's a very good intention. You want to deal with counterfeit notes, that is a very good intention. You want a cashless economy, that's a very good intention.
Yeah.
But as they often say, the road to hell is
It's
paved with very good intentions.
So what would you have wanted them to do differently? Because Nalin Kohli makes the point that this hardship could only have been avoided had the implementation been staggered. And the moment the implementation was staggered, you were giving the game away.
Sure.
And you needed the secrecy around it.
So the question, Barkha, is what was your main objective? Was it black money? Was it the counterfeit notes, or was it the cashless economy? And in each of these three, if you had wanted to implement any of these objectives, you would have done it differently.
Like what? Give me one example and then I'll get
Absolutely. Let me talk about the simplest, not the controversial black money and, counterfeit notes. Cashless economy, right?
Yeah.
We have, on the 11th of April, under the previous governor, Raghuram Rajan, introduced a system called UPI, Unified Payment Interface.
Right.
It was a path-breaking move.
Yeah.
A lot of effort went in, and basically, Barkha, what it means is that anyone in this country who has a bank account, and there are now thousands and millions of Jan Dhan accounts open, a simple person with UPI could transact between 1 rupee and 1 lakh of rupees free of cost. No, I want to finish this. Nevertheless, despite having the technology available, neither the finance minister nor the prime minister has pushed it. Only 23 banks today have activated UPI. And on the day after demonetization is announced, the very morning after that, the prime minister appears in a full-page ad for Paytm, which is a private wallet provider, by the way, owned...
So you're saying it's a conflict of interest? Okay.
Not only, no, hold on a minute. Owned by Alibaba, which is a Chinese company. So first of all, how did they know? How did they get the space? Very next morning. Secondly, using the Prime Minister to promote cashless transactions by private operator owned by Chinese.
I'm not trying to cut you short, but
Why not do it?
I actually have Arundhati Bhattacharya, the head of the State Bank of India.
Please ask her why they're not doing UPI and why
Please
they
ask
haven't
her.
promoted
I'll ask her
it.
that and more. I'm requesting my panel to just hold by because this is a woman in the hot seat right now and we need to hear from her. Welcome to the program, ma'am. First, give us an overall sense of the chaos. Has the chaos reduced at all? Do the banks feel more in control? The common perception is that the ATMs are drying up, that there isn't enough cash. There is, of course, panic withdrawals that are on. I concede that point. But how would you assess the situation today?
I don't think there is any panic, first and foremost. And the second thing, I think whatever concerns people had, they are abating by the day. On Sunday, we did 10% less transactions than Saturday. Today, in the the southern states that are operating, we have done 25% less transactions than we did on Sunday. So obviously, the number of people who are coming to the counters is coming down. Most of our ATMs are now up and running. So yes, they are still having a problem of drying up quickly because we are still loading them with only 100 rupee notes. And there is obviously a physical limitation to the number of 100 rupee notes we can put in at any point of time. But having said that, we have completed the back-end calibration of both 500 and 2000 rupee new notes. We have already started dispensing 2000 rupee notes in a few ATMs today, and the recalibration at the front end is going on full swing.
Okay.
So to that extent, very soon we will be able to bring back much better normality in the ATM transactions as well.
What is the biggest hardship you're facing then? If you say there is no panic, what is the biggest challenge for the banks at the moment?
No, at this point, the biggest challenge obviously are the people who are coming in for the exchange, for the deposits, for the withdrawals. So obviously the number of transactions that we are doing are far more than what we normally do in such cases. For instance, in Savings Bank, on the very first day, I got 11,000 crores. In a normal month, I get 8,000 crores. What we get in a month, I have done 140% of that in one day. So obviously that's a challenge.
Ma'am, we now see media reports that the RBI did in fact want the banks to have 100 rupee exclusive ATM machines, and this order was passed by the RBI well before the announcement. Did the banks ignore this instruction from the RBI to be better prepared for this announcement?
No, the instruction from the RBI was only in respect of one ATM per district. It was not for all ATMs. I don't think you have seen the order properly, and one ATM per district was configured with only 100 rupees.
Do you believe that you needed more time to implement this policy better, or do you accept the government argument that the secrecy was key to the announcement?
No, I think, you need to accept the government argument in this case, because this is a huge step. And if you do this step after getting everybody in on the act, then, the impact would be much less. So to that extent, I think that the government has done the right thing. I also applaud the government for having that confidence in the banking system that we would be robust enough to handle this. Yes, people have been put to inconvenience. People have had difficulties. We accept all of that. But I think this is also a very golden opportunity to try and go as much digital as possible. And we are seeing in our POS transactions almost a 300% increase, in our internet banking transactions a 140% increase. And we are telling everybody that if you have a card, you can jolly well use that instead of going to the ATM, drawing cash and then doing the transactions. Especially in respect of hospitals and medicine shops. There are very few hospitals and very few medicine shops that don't have POS machines.
Ma'am, Meera Sanyal, who's of course headed a bank herself, raised the point of the UPI system. Why that could not have been pushed is something that Raghuram Rajan, when he was governor of RBI, did suggest doing. Wouldn't that have been a better way of proceeding than what we are seeing right now?
No, I think, you have to understand that every system has its own time that it needs in order to get worked into every institution. UPI, when it came into being, had several lacunae, especially the fact that the reconciliation and the grievance reversal mechanism was almost absent. We have pointed out from SBI what were the difficulties. When you have, for instance, a debit card of Bank A, and you use it to draw cash from an ATM of Bank B, then you will find that many of these transactions actually fail. If you look at my failed ATM transactions, how much come when they use it on my ATMs and how much it comes when they use it on somebody else's ATM, 70% comes when they use it on somebody else's ATM. The reason for this is that the transaction goes through several hops, through several systems. Now, in each of these hops, if there is some problem, even some power fluctuation, something that happens, then the transaction drops. Sometimes the cash is also taken out, but it actually doesn't get dispensed. In an UPI, we had counted there could be up to 14 hops, and we had therefore requested that NPCI should have a uniform application which everybody should use, which NPI did not agree to because many of the banks had already developed their own.
Right.
But as a result, the number of hops can be huge. You can have the application of one bank, draw from another bank, put it in yet another bank. So, the number of hops keep going up, and as a result, the resolution becomes an issue. However, in spite of that, SBI has implemented UPI. On our very first day, we did 15,000 transactions, which is 3 times that of everybody else put together till now in the system.
Okay. I want to ask you a last question. All this money that is coming back to the banks, right? 3 lakh crores and counting, according to the finance ministry, ma'am. What happens with this money? What happens with this money now? And is this black money or is this legal cash money? There's a lot of confusion over that as well.
No, that confusion you should ask the chartered accountant. For me, this is deposit that has come in. This is deposit that was not there in the banking system. We welcome these deposits because this will enable us to lend more. And obviously, because the deposits are coming in such bulk, this will reduce rates.
So you're actually saying that the banks that have been struggling with NPAs, the non-performing assets, this money can be used by the banks to maybe address that or to lend more. It's not money that goes back to the government coffers, because there's a degree of confusion about that.
This money, there is no going back anywhere, nor will it be used for resolution of NPAs. This money is customers' deposits. As customers' deposits, customers can take it back. It is money that customers have put. They had kept it somewhere else, and for what reason I do not know. But maybe they were using it in their business, maybe they had it somewhere. So in any case, they have put it now into the banking system. They will retain the deposit or take back cash. Either way, it is customers' money. Government has nothing to do with this bit of money, nor is it going to be used for NPAs. However, if rates come down, and the second thing is in the medium term, if demand goes up, both of these will help in NPA resolution.
And quickly, ma'am, how long do you think before the system will normalize? Would you say 10 days? The Prime Minister asked for 50. What's the timeline you'd look at?
50 days is what has been given to us for completing of the demonetization exercise. But normalcy, especially in the ATMs, our intention is to try and do it as quickly as possible and maybe by end November. The problem is that in ATMs, when you recalibrate them, you actually have to physically go and adjust the sensors. It is a physical activity at every ATM that we have to do. And therefore, there are 2 lakh ATMs in the system. So obviously, it's going to take a little bit of time for us to get together the manpower that will go around and do these. Therefore, I believe that, if we get time by up till, say, end of November, we should be able to complete the entire job. In the meanwhile, we are doing a number of things to promote digital. Not only digital, we are also taking out mobile ATMs. We will be taking out mobile POS machines in order to disperse cash at different centers. So we are doing various things. We are energizing our business correspondents. There are 240,000 POS machines in the country that can dispense cash. So that also we are trying to energize the merchants to do these transactions. So a lot is being done to ensure that even this interim period, as much of help as possible to the people is given.
Okay, thank you. Very important points you've made, which we are now going to take to our panel. Arundhati Bhattacharya, woman in the hot seat, head of the State Bank of India. Thank you for joining us on the Buck Stops here. Let me bring in the panel straight away. Abhishek, you were trying to make a point, and then I'll come to you, Mahua. Abhishek Singh, go ahead.
Barkha, I've been hearing some of this. I want to make 2 or 3 points. There is first and foremost, Barkha, fundamental conceptual issue. There is no doubt that black money is affected. But this method, the demonetization of affecting black money, is much worse than trying and catching your nose from behind your neck. At the highest, the total amount of this is 15%. At the highest, the total amount of unaccounted person amount is about 7.5%. If you are very lucky, it's 10%. Now the question arises, to get at 7%, you are going to cause immeasurable agony to 90% plus other things, with getting literally a trivial attack on black money by catching your nose from behind your neck. It just doesn't make sense. Secondly, I'll be very brief, Radhika, just give me a minute, half a minute. 1978, please ask yourself, how long did it take for money to come back into circulation? Some people say 3, the maximum it took was 6 months. So is it worth it is the question. You may get some black money back, but is this worth it? Now, the other is of course the managerial, this is the conceptual aspect, but the managerial aspect, and it could well be a case of fake currency and terrorism being the primary object, and the Prime Minister suddenly riding piggyback on the black money, which was not at all, I think, the object of this exercise. Now, on the managerial, it's a disaster. There appears to be no planning. The jury is out, by the way, Barkha, as to whether even ATMs could not have been calibrated in a secret manner, although it is pleaded it's impossible to do. I don't think that's so. There are material out in the market suggesting that it could have been calibrated in a different manner while maintaining secrecy. And the most important, Barkha, and I think this is just being brushed aside because we know Mr. Kejriwal is frequently a maverick. He cries wolf so many times. So when a real wolf comes, people ignore him. But we have said it, and the figures are alarming. And the alarming is what? Between August and September end, the deposits rose from 4 trillion rupees in Indian banks to 9 trillion. I have the figures here in front of me.
Okay.
5 lakh trillion rupee deposits rose.
Right.
The finance minister came out with a hasty excuse saying the arrears were paid. Do you know how much the arrears were, Barkha? 34,600 crores. Where did the balance 4,63,000 crores? How were they miraculously deposited in banks?
Okay, let Nalin briefly
in all
comment
of
on that
2
and then
months?
Mahua. Okay, let Nalin briefly comment on
And
that.
all this fudging
Yeah.
about arrears of Central Fourth Pay Commission and all that nonsense.
Let
It
Nalin
is a
respond.
minuscule fraction, 34,600 crores.
I have to move it along.
So there
let
is just
Nalin
one
respond.
second. There is a conceptual aspect, there is a managerial aspect, and there is a mala fide aspect.
Okay.
All 3 are important.
Nalin, briefly, please.
First, my compliments for taking Ms. Arundhati Bhattacharya of SBI, because she could, I think, through her very erudite comments, end a political argument that was trying to run in the garb of some banking expertise. Second is with
You
regard to
mean
Dr.
Meera
Singh, which
Sanyal.
was
You're obviously
rather
a reference to
enjoyable.
Meera Sanyal, and
Of
she
course,
can-
I definitely
okay.
mean. Of course,
Okay.
I mean
All
with
right.
Meera
All right.
Sanyal ji.
Okay.
With regard to Dr. Singhvi, that was an enjoyable description of the Congress brand of economics, which has, of course, contributed to where we stand today with regard to the fight of black money. So that was rather enjoyable. Of course, in democracy is entitled to have that view, and we can't have a fight with that. With regard to running down everything that this government has done, that's been consistent. They ran down the Prime Minister on Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. 26 crore people do have bank accounts now. In the last 40 years after nationalization, none were opened, or very few. With regards to comparing 1978, that's a state of mind. That's a state of mind of the economic realities of a decade, of so many decades ago that don't exist. However, so be it. They are entitled to have that point of view. And three is run down everything and say, let's loosen it up, probably gives not only unease away, it also gives away the reason that why are they so keen that somehow we should open it up and allow these old notes to come into the structure, so that I don't know whose interest they are. However, yet I stand by what I said at the beginning. If you see the enthusiasm when Prime Minister Modi speaks, if you see the response, and if you hear, despite the inconvenience, the ordinary citizen on the streets, so many of them,
Okay.
it is heartening to know that somewhere there is support in India.
I have to now get the people who haven't spoken yet, and then we'll go around for second reactions.
Barkha,
Mahua.
not a single answer to my 3
Why,
points.
and Abhishek, you can come back on that. Mahua Mitra, go ahead.
Yeah, the most important thing is it's amusing to hear the BJP come out and say this is an inconvenience. We have seen footage on your television channel as well as on others about how people have died waiting in line. Death is not an inconvenience. We've spoken to countless laborers who've lost daily earnings. Losing your earnings isn't inconvenience. Not having
there's no
access to
evidence
food.
to see
One
that
second.
they've
Not
died from standing
Okay,
in the
fine,
line, right?
Okay,
We
that's
can't
fine.
draw
Let's
that-
put that
that
aside. Let's put that
causality.
aside.
Yeah.
Let's put that aside. Let's
Yeah.
put that aside. Not having access to food, and this is very real. This
Yeah.
is very real. Doesn't have to be proven
Yes.
by me. It's not an inconvenience, right? Not being turned away from a private hospital because you don't have cash to pay for it, and this is happening all over Bengal, is not an inconvenience.
Yeah.
Losing daily wage earnings is not an inconvenience. It's a violation of your fundamental rights. Article 300A in the Constitution is the right to property. You are not being able to access your property, which is the money in the bank, as and when you want. So
Yeah.
that is you cannot do that by executive authority or fiat.
So
you
you're
need to
saying
go through
personal liberty
parliament.
is being interfered with.
Personal liberty is number one. So this is not inconvenience, number one. Number two, I love the way that the party in power is saying we'll get back this money and this will go into social spending. I also like the way the chairman of the SBI very conveniently said that we'll get back these NPAs and we'll lend it out.
Yeah.
Two things. Number one, to go back to what the
She
BJP
said it's not
says,
for NPAs, it's for the
it's
customers, and the banks
which
can
is
use
fine,
it to lend.
Which is
because
fine.
it
So these are
creates
two different
more,
things.
Fluidity, cash
Absolutely.
fluidity. Yeah.
So let us attack these two separately. Number one, on what the government says. We'll get back the money and we'll spend on social structure.
Yeah.
Under this government, every single social spending program has been cut between 15 and 20%. So please do not give us that about...
So that's an important point raised by the SBI
Yeah.
chairman. Can I get Anjali to add to that? What, as a rights activist, for you is the biggest issue right now? And then Sunil and CM Vasudev have to come in. Yes.
Barkha, I think that people are being inconvenienced, and that's no secret. The Prime Minister himself has conceded that people are being
But they're saying
inconvenienced.
it's an inevitable inconvenience for a larger
And
good.
I think that it's important to say that as a country, as people, we have been fighting against corruption. People do want corruption to end, and any steps to end corruption are welcome. And people are also willing to live with certain amount of inconvenience.
Okay, then what's the
But I
problem?
think the issue here is how sustainable are the steps that are being taken. If we look at any anti-corruption measure, there are at least three things that I can think of. First of all, what is the root cause for black money to be generated in our country? The fountainhead of corruption and the need for black money
funding of
is
elections.
funding of elections. Nobody is addressing the
Yeah.
elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And I think that we have been stressing for a long time that political parties need to come clean, they need to be transparent about their funding. There is a Central Information Commission order which stated that 6 major political parties in our country needed to come under the right to information law, open their books so that people could know what was happening
Yeah.
in terms of political party funding.
And you're saying without that...
Till date, it hasn't happened. We would hope. And when the Prime Minister says that in the next 50 days, he wants to take steps and he thinks black money can be taken care of, this needs to be. And even if other parties don't come in, the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party needs to make the first step.
It's a great point. It's a great point, especially when you look at the fact that 80%, an estimated between 75 to 80% of poll funding is from undisclosed sources, because the political party does not have to disclose cash if it's below 20,000. So I could make a donation of 10 tranches of 20,000 rupees each or less, and I would not have to disclose it. I want to bring in Seem Vasudev and Sunil Alag, and then we'll take it around the panel. Seem Vasudev, to you first. SBI chairperson Arundhati Bhattacharya very interestingly clarifying that this 3 lakh crores that is coming back as deposits, this enables the banks to lend more, and this is effectively the customer's money. This is not going back to government. This is not going to increase government spending. So people might say, as Abhishek Singhvi has asked, what is all this achieving then, Mr. Vasudev?
Well, what it is going to achieve, I think it's an enormous thing that it will achieve. Of course, I'll come to this banking part that you mentioned.
Yes.
But you know, if you've got about 14 lakh crores of currency notes which are suddenly being taken off through demonetization and to replace them, it is such a huge process, and it cannot be painless. People have to go through the pain. But I think the real risk for the government is that after people have sort of, to some extent willingly and to some extent not so willingly, gone through that pain, and then after a few months they find that the benefits that were expected to come out of this project, they are not realized. Black money again resurfaces and other benefits don't. So government has to see that other complementary measures which are needed, because this alone cannot end the menace of black money. Of course, it is a very big step, but it has to be complemented by others like electoral funding, like bankruptcy law, like the real estate regulator, like the GST. All these things put together can have a more effective attack on black money. But the benefit in terms of counterfeit currency, they are pretty evident. The benefits in terms of choking the flow of funds for terrorists and all, I think that is a very clear advantage. So those advantages are more obvious. Now, coming to the banking part that you mentioned, of course, all that money is in people's money which are held in deposit with the banks, and they are going to lend it to whoever they feel is going to use it in a viable manner. But it's not going to help their NPAs or anything. It's not going to help government financing. But certainly it will create a better investment climate, because with the banks being flushed with more funds, interest rates will come down, and there will be better investment and more takers for investment.
Let me bring in Sunil
That
on
is the benefit that will come out of this.
Sunil Alag, is the problem then the messaging and the implementation and not the policy itself? Is it the implementation or is it the messaging? Because there is a degree of panic. Although Arundhati Bhattacharya said there's no panic, it's evident in the lines. In fact, I keep saying that those of us who can use credit cards or debit cards should not be standing at those lines. We are still representing people of privilege. So, but the fact is there's panic, and we're seeing that. So why is there panic, Sunil?
You know, the panic, I think there is a problem in execution. One has to accept it. But the point remains that, look, as somebody raised earlier, 2 weeks, if that lady from Trinamool Congress is saying the poor person is dying daily wage, for how long? You mean the nation cannot tolerate 2 to 3 weeks in a nation's life to get something right? And you're worried about whether, look, even some people have said villages of UP, the banks are about 10 kilometers away. How do they get to it? How are they surviving before all this happened? Are you telling me each villager had only 1,000 rupee notes? Was he only having 500 rupee notes with which he was running it? So let's not fire the gun on the agricultural poor. They are there, they were surviving, and I think for 1 or 2 weeks, we don't question our soldiers when they are fighting at the thing. Did you have your food? They fight and they die, and for a couple, and we say, well done for the country. Now, if everyone gets together and says the intent is right, let us make some valid suggestions on how we can bring about it. One of the suggestions which I want to put forward is, till the 24th of November.
So when you draw an analogy with the army, is this war? Should civilian populations? Okay, I'll allow Mahua to actually come in on that. Mahua, briefly, since you mentioned.
1 second.
But is this war?
It is a war against corruption. Barkha, it is a war against corruption. It will not change overnight unless you do something drastic.
Okay, I need to allow Mahua to rebut you and then Meera.
Okay. Cash, fine. It's all in the banks.
Okay.
You increase your tax base. Everything is going
Got
to
it,
happen right.
Sunil. Got it. I'll allow Mahua a brief interjection.
This is just the kind of rhetoric that the BJP does so well. So
But
he
Sunil
says,
is not a party spokesperson.
well,
Yeah.
he's definitely speaking like one, and I beg to differ.
This
There are
is
a lot
a
of...
fact.
Sir, let me finish,
Come on,
please.
yeah,
I didn't
rhetoric.
interrupt you,
I'm
sir.
not
Sir, I
interested in
didn't...
rhetoric, huh?
Okay,
I
let
don't
her
belong to a political party.
let her make
you're
a point,
making a
Sunil.
rhetoric out of it.
Sunil, let her make a point.
Sir?
If there's rhetoric, it's coming from you.
Sir, please,
Yeah.
please have the grace to let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. I would very kindly ask you
Okay,
to let
make
me
your point,
finish.
Mahua.
Number one. Number two, the thing he says it's people who are fighting on the soldiers. We don't say when we're going to die. Soldiers sign up to join the army. We have a paid army. They sign up to join the army. It's a very different thing from poor people who are sitting in villages having something inflicted on them, having absolutely nothing to do with the decision, number one. So I think this is in very, very poor taste to both the common people as well as to our army, number one. And the second thing, when he says there is no inconvenience and it's 3 weeks, who decides? Who decides?
So
Who has given you, who died and left you, God?
I will take that to
Of course
Nalin
there's
and Abhishek in a moment. Sunil, hang on. Meera, your particular question to the BJP, since Nalin had a little aside at you, I will allow you to put a question to her.
No, but she's misquoting me. I've got to come in for a fact check. I didn't say there's no inconvenience.
I never
for
said
2
you didn't
weeks
say
you
that there
can't
was no
bear
inconvenience.
for the country.
You
Who
said
says
that
there's
you-
no inconvenience?
Got it,
You
Sunil.
compared them to soldiers.
Yeah, but she's saying that Sunil said that there's no inconvenience.
No, no,
Sunil,
no.
compare-
She's saying,
No.
she's saying who is the government
I
to
compare
decide
it to
what my
soldiers that
inconvenience
people
should
are
be.
paid. You
No,
are
she's
part
not
of the
saying
country
that.
and you don't want to do anything for the country.
Who
The
decides what
equation
is good for the
was
country?
That you are a citizen of India and you don't want to do anything for India, right?
Excuse
I
me,
will
sir,
not
what
even
gives you
tolerate
the
1
right
week
to
of
assume,
inconvenience.
Barkha, are you going
What
to
is
let me
this,
come
yeah?
in?
That's
Excuse
the
me.
only comparison I made.
Who decides, what gives you the right to sit there and tell me, as another citizen of this country, as to what is good for this country or not? Who died and left you, God?
Okay,
That's my question.
now we'll come back to Sunil. I do have to move on. Meera, go ahead.
No, go ahead and you have a right to say what you like.
Sunil, I have to move on. We have substantive
You have a
issues
right
to
say
discuss. I'll come
whatever
back to you,
like. I have a
Sunil.
right to say whatever
Of
I
course
like.
you do, and I'll come back to you. I promise you. Meera, go ahead.
Very quickly to Sunil. Sunil, you know, this is an insult to the Indian Army and to the Indian Armed Forces. The Indian Armed Forces, firstly, never attack their own citizens. And secondly, no, hold on a minute, Sunil. And
Why should we
secondly,
forget
they
to
never
set it
leave
on
a
end?
man behind.
All right,
This
fine.
is an attack on the citizens of
army.
India. I have just come back, Barkha. I traveled from Bombay to Delhi by train. The next day, demonetization was announced.
Yeah.
I have stood with my 80-year-old mother and my 79-year-old uncle in line for 2 days, 4 hours at a stretch. The first day, the banks ran out of money. We had to go back. Everyone standing in that line was desperate for cash to use it for daily expenses. I then went to Ajmer and Pushkar.
Okay.
There's the biggest fair of the country going on in Pushkar at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
People come from all over Rajasthan to sell their stuff.
Yeah.
There is no one buying and there's no one selling because there's no cash to transact
So
in.
I must allow
You
Nalin.
are crippling this country, and I think that is very, very important to
Nalin,
know.
a couple of points raised here. The Paytm ad, which Meera Sanyal says is a conflict of interest. The fact that the cash economy, the parts of it that are legal, should not get sabotaged with the parts that are illegal. Quick response there, and then we'll bring in Abhishek and then Anjali.
Actually, that's basic. It doesn't require a response.
Yes.
Even a child would understand this, that, you know, what is illegitimate and what is legitimate is legitimate.
Yes.
I think that's absolutely very clear. That does not require a response. With regard to the Paytm ad, that's another Aam Aadmi Party technique. In any case, I must say that I've always respected Meera ji as a banker. Unfortunately, I don't command much respect for her party. For the only reason I've not met another human being still who has taken the oath of his children on political power and gone back on it. I'd rather shoot myself dead. But that's the standard they are used to. So, you know, when she speaks with the Aam Aadmi head, I do understand she has to drop many things that she was otherwise is very qualified to speak on. Now, with regards to the comment with Anjali was making,
Yes.
I think the principle of what Anjali is saying is very important in
Yes.
terms of the overall fight against black money.
Yes.
But I strongly also denounce this entire thing of putting everything only at the political door. Does an engineer or a doctor or even an advocate or any other person in the government at any functioning level or in the private sector who takes a bribe, what has that got to do with the political funding? Nothing. But that is also black money and that is also corruption.
But you people
so I
have
think
the
this has to be
power
realized that
change
this is
the
a big
rules.
fight.
The engineer doesn't have the power. You and
Let me just finish.
Abhishek and
Let me
Mahua
just
and
finish.
Meera
Let me finish.
have the
Let me
powers.
finish.
None of
Let
you
me
are going to
finish.
do it. None of you.
Sorry.
I
You all
disagree.
talk about
I
black
think
money.
first-
None of you
I
have
think
ever
first,
changed
now
laws
Barkha, I
on
must
this.
come. Now Barkha, now Barkha, I must. Now Barkha, as a straight on that, I'd say.
Yeah.
You have just crossed the line away from being a journalist and made such a wide sweeping general statement.
Okay, show
you
me
people
where
have,
any
so
of
what
you
is
have
this
made
fight
moves
about
to
on
ban
in
cash
terms? I'll tell you
donations.
right
We
now.
have. Aam Aadmi Party
No, one
has.
minute, hold on.
Absolutely.
Just one thing you have
Anyone
caught.
tried to
Well,
change
let's
the
not
law?
talk of the
Come
Aam
on.
Aadmi
We
Party.
don't-
We've also seen
Okay,
what
Nalin,
happened
you
with
can
their
take your
entries
voice.
and
Okay,
all that
Nalin,
stuff.
Nalin,
So
but
let's
I'm an
not get
equal
down that
opportunity
road.
offender.
Let's come
I
back to a
attacked all of you.
substantive development.
So I'm an equal opportunity
My
offender.
last point,
Yes.
my last point
Barkha.
Yeah,
on
coming to you,
what
Abhishek. Hang on.
Mahua was saying,
Yeah.
Dr. Singh, we just to finish one sentence.
Yeah.
On what Mahua was saying in terms of, about the poor and them suffering and all that, yes, that's a fair point. I thought the Trinamool Congress, isn't bad governance equally responsible for that? And I thought the Trinamool Congress always said that the CPM and others offered bad governance that put the poor to great problems.
Okay,
they
let me
want to
get an
shake
Abhishek
hands
now.
with them today.
Let me get
So
Abhishek.
I think
Abhishek,
these
go
are
ahead.
political arguments, not
Okay.
substantive.
Okay, Abhishek.
Firstly, Barkha, I have not yet heard any answer to the three questions I raised. Conceptual, categorically, for literally catching less than the hair on the tail, you are throttling the dog. Certainly you'll catch some hair on the tail, but is it worth it killing the dog for that little bit of hair at the end of the tail?
Okay.
There is absolutely no logic. This is not a black money exercise. This is some kind of a piggybacking of black money on what might be a reasonably valid exercise only for terrorism and fake currency. And there I think there's a hypocrisy.
What about the
You
3
suddenly
lakh
switch
crores in
things
deposits,
to try
Abhishek?
and project it as a
Abhishek,
black
what
money
about the
drive.
3 lakh crores in
Number
deposits
one.
in the last
No,
4
I'm
days?
telling-
The 3 lakh crore rupees
I'm
in
telling
deposits in the last
I'm
4
telling
days.
you.
You said nothing. That
Of
sounds,
course.
that sounds
of
like
course.
more than dog's hair to me.
That was my second.
It sounds like more than dog's hair to
That
me.
is, no. But the problem is, Barkha, you're talking of absolute figures. They're irrelevant.
Okay. Okay.
Let me explain to you.
Okay.
15% of the entire thing is the 100% which demonetization touches is only 15%. That's cash.
Okay.
Of
But
the
it's a start.
15% cash, 5 to 7% is accounted. So 7% is all, which includes 3 lakhs. Don't say absolute figures. You are doing that conceptually, it is mismanaged because you are talking of 7% for which you are
So let me
causing
get CM
grief,
Vasudev to
pain,
take-
agony
Can I get
to
CM Vasudev? I think
90%
he's the
plus.
most
Number
qualified
two, number two.
Yeah.
There is no number two.
Yeah.
There is no answer to my point on this remarkable sudden surge of deposits. 4,63,000 crores of deposits are not accounted for by arrears of fourth pay commission.
I will
or
ask
seventh pay
Nalin that
commission
specifically,
from
but I'm in
August
the
to
last
September.
7 to 8 minutes
Number
of my
three,
show.
Number
Yeah,
three.
yeah.
Number three. We are talking a lot of cards. In cards. Do you know why you don't pay in cards? Why ordinary people don't pay in cards?
Why?
Because a card carries a 18% service tax or a VAT. What is the government talking about of a cashless economy?
Well, if the
unless they
GST
reduce these
comes, I'm
taxes?
assuming the
Actually
VAT would-
speaking,
Okay.
most people will start using cards. But when people come to pay with cards, the man says, I must make a bill which has so much tax.
Okay, fair enough.
अच्छा
So
दे
CM
दोगे,
Vasudev,
तो हम
CM
नहीं
Vasudev.
करेंगे. That's
Okay.
what is happening.
Okay, CM Vasudev, is it indeed just such a little fraction that Mr. Singhvi would argue it's just not worth the pain? That the gain is too little to be worth the pain, Mr. Vasudev?
Everybody recognizes that the size of our parallel economy today is almost 40 to 50%. So this exercise also aimed at ensuring or seeing that a lot of this parallel economy merges with the regular economy. So it's not just here at the end of a tail in that sense.
Yes.
It's a 50% of our economy is parallel economy.
Right.
And there is a lot of black money, there is a lot
is
of
affecting
cash transactions and all
70%
that.
of it.
So you want to achieve multiple objectives of doing away with black money, of having a cashless type of a system in our economy. So those are multiple benefits that will come.
Okay.
But out of the money that is being deposited in the bank, 3 lakh crores or whatever figure you mentioned,
Yes.
I think the real test will come when at the end of the show on 31st December, out of the 14 lakh crores which are the currency notes, how many are really returned?
Right.
And the balance is something which people would have destroyed, they don't find,
Which is what I was
find
trying
it
to
worth
ask
their
her,
while.
that is this
But
is
one point, just
legal or
one point I
illegal?
want to make,
Yes.
that probably the government has sort of missed a big opportunity, that they had the IDS scheme about 2-3 months ago, which finished in September, where there was a penalty of 45% and all that.
Right.
If they were to have merged that scheme with this demonetization, then I feel hordes of black money would have come into the system. Now it is not worth the while of the black money holder
I can answer that too.
to convert it, because 200%.
I will let Nalin answer that right after Sunil. Sunil, go ahead, and then I'll come to you, Anjali. I know you've been waiting a long time. Yes, Sunil.
You know, I want to end once and for all on saying, let's forget about whatever was there. This is a very good scheme. It has gone wrong on a few points. Instead of people making valid suggestions on how to improve it for the next 1 week or 10 days, everybody wants to throw the baby out with the bathwater, saying it's a rubbish scheme. And it's not the only scheme, because the PM has already said that that's the first thing. You wait after 31st December. I'm going to bring in a second and a third and a fourth to get black money out. It's like cleaning up your house of pest control. Sure, the pests will come back in 10, 15, 20 years. You will never get rid of corruption in any country in the world. But don't say that I will not go in for any pest control at all. This is the bad thing. We are going 2 weeks. People are going to say, no, I don't want to be in queues. I don't want to do this. I spoke on an earlier channel just before this. And the UP people were all jumping up and down. I'll end on this, saying he's done it to win the elections. I said, if you say he's harming the poor guy, he'll lose the elections.
Okay,
you should be jumping
I
with
have
joy
to come in there.
Nalin,
maybe you can take Anjali's question along with what you've heard. So Anjali and then Nalin.
Look, we've heard about the war on corruption, pest control and everything. I think the credibility of this move will lie on the commitment that the government shows to a proper anti-corruption framework. We know people on the streets have been involved. The Bharatiya Janata Party itself was supporting the demand for an effective Lokpal, for a whistleblowers protection law. Unfortunately, it's going to be 3 years since the whistleblower protection law and the Lokpal were passed. Both of them have not been implemented. We don't have a single Lokpal today.
I just want to say, I'll give you the last word and let everyone else
I just want to say here that when black money gets exposed, when corruption gets exposed, people go file complaints. If there is no proper investigating body to take care of those complaints, then what's the point?
Mahua and Meera, and then Nalin can wrap this up.
I completely agree with Anjali. It's the point I made yesterday on your show as well, is that without structural change, this is all eyewash. This is just inconvenience a poor person. If you look at the Prevention of Corruption Act, you've got abysmal rates of conviction. If you look at the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, 52 persons have been arrested in the last 10 years. And then if you look at the Whistleblowers Act, you had the POCA, the Prevention of Corruption Amendment Bill, which was chaired by the BJP Rajya Sabha, has said that a whistleblower only has 7 days to tell the police.
Meera,
how are you going to get rid of bribery?
And Nalin has to wrap this up.
Very simple question to Nalin, and that is this. The Aam Aadmi Party only accepts donation either electronically, so hence cashless, or by check. Is the BJP willing to come out tomorrow morning and say they are going to do the same? Simple question.
I think it goes to the hub of the matter, and it's a question that will apply to all parties.
I'll start from Meera.
Yes, Nalin, go ahead.
I will start from Meera and end with Mr. Vasudev.
And Mr. Singhvi's very specific question on the
yes,
deposits.
Okay. Yeah, so number one is with regard to Meera, the Aam Aadmi Party, as I said, I referred to this, oath of the children. They also are the ones who sacked their own Lokpal mechanism, and they had a fairly decent scandal with regard to dubious checks that had come their way. So that's why that's the only standard that I pray.
Are you willing to take check-only payments?
The BJP does not. Let me finish.
Are you willing to take check-only payments?
Let me finish.
Okay, forget the Aam Aadmi Party.
As I said, the only standard we are not going to. We will never ever, and I will quit politics permanently if we come even remotely close to being to the Aam Aadmi Party. They probably murdered the India Against Corruption movement most credibly that any party could have done. Number one. Number two, with regard to, well, I told you. Number two is with regard to the scale of the entire exercise.
Yes.
And that's the point I want to answer to Mr. Vasudev. Is that in 1978, also Dr. Singhvi referred to it, only 146 crores out of the 9,100 odd crores of currency was removed. That was one note out of 100. In 2016, almost 8 out of 10, a little over 8 out of 10 of the notes are going to be moved out. That's the scale of it. So when Mr. Vasudev speaks, and he's making an interesting point, that if you linked the IDS with this, it would have been a windfall gain. Let me give a counter view. That the number of notes that don't return into the structure, that get destroyed, that people are forced, that in the sacks that they've got they can't bring, the government is exonerated of that liability. And they can print those notes which are liability free, far better than an IDS scheme.
Nalin, two specific questions.
And my last thing to Dr. Singhvi.
Yes.
On a lighter note, Dr. Singhvi, it's dangerous for you or me to speak too much about hair. People would, immediately start saying maybe we desire what we don't desire.
Nalin, on the question of Abhishek, on the deposit numbers that have been quoted, the spike and the surge in deposits, point one, and point two, Meera's not asking this, Barkha is the BJP willing to stand up tomorrow and say we We will show the way. We will take donations only via check or electronically.
Well, I'll tell you, in the BJP, yes, I'll answer that.
Will you take that position tomorrow? Will the Prime Minister make that announcement tomorrow?
Who is now heading the country, who's taken it head on. Look, I mean, you can. Why don't we do something first tomorrow on NDTV, then leave the country?
Okay, I have to end. You're not answering.
Straight to it. In the Prime Minister, we have a person who's going to take this fight to corruption.
Okay,
It's very logical.
It's a yes/no question.
He's not answering the yes or no. Is it a yes, Nalin? Is it a yes?
About what?
Cashless political funding.
By the BJP.
By the BJP to
I mean,
start.
I'm not the right person. That
Okay,
okay,
we'll have to leave it there. We will have to leave it there.
No, this is a policy decision.
Which all parties are culpable
party
for.
Where one man who can sit
I
on
agree.
TV and say it all
I
for
agree. I
everyone.
will have to leave it there. Thanking our panel. This debate will continue. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.